What is up, guys? It is your boy MaineMania, and welcome back to another episode of Devs Nerf Survivors. All right, so jokes aside, the developer update for April of 2020 has basically been announced today. So we're going to look into this and have a quick discussion on the changes that are being made. So first things first, repair changes. They have reduced the co-op efficiency of gens, meaning as a solo survivor, if you are soloing a gen, your speed will not change. However, if you were to duo, trio, or quad a gen previously, there was a 10% debuff to your repair speed. Prove Thyself counteracted that by giving it back to you so you would repair the gen at full efficiency. Now, they have changed this to 15%. So they have slowed down the gen progress and the gen repair speed when multiple people are working on the same gen. Prove Thyself has also been updated to compensate for this difference so that once again, if you're using Prove Thyself, you will repair gens at the old, the natural normal speed of multiple people working on a gen. A lot of people think Prove Thyself is broken or OP or so strong and it's like the ultimate gen rush perk. It's not. It's not. Prove Thyself is not even a good perk. I would probably rate it as C tier at best. With multiple people working on the same gen, Prove Thyself will mostly save you about 4 seconds. All right, so first things first, a lot of people don't understand how Prove Thyself works. I'll just explain it in lamest terms possible, okay? When multiple people work on a gen, they are penalized. Their repair speed is penalized. Prove Thyself simply gets rid of that penalty. That's all it does. It does not stack, so only one Prove Thyself effect can be used per generator. So when two people are normally working on a gen, it would normally take them 44 seconds to do that gen, and that's because they both have a 10% repair penalty for co-oping a gen. Prove Thyself removes that penalty, and it takes them 40 seconds. Whoop-de-doo, you saved a big 4 seconds. Not that, that 4 seconds can't help, but the people that make a big deal out of Prove Thyself, Prove Thyself, and then they try to quad gens with Prove Thyself, and they repair the gens 40% faster. That's not the way it works. In your mind, you just don't understand the perk and what it's doing. It is simply removing the 10% penalty to your repair speed when multiple people are working on the same gen. The gen gets done maybe 4 seconds faster. Not a big deal. I definitely don't think it's a broken perk, and I definitely don't think it's higher than, I would say, B tier at best. Literally B tier at best. I would personally put it in C tier. So now that you guys understand that, the new repair penalty for multiple people working on gens is 15%, which I do believe will add an additional 2 seconds to your repair time when multiple people are working on gens. On average, it'll add about 2 more seconds. So whereas 2 people working on a gen would naturally do it in 44 seconds, now I believe it'll be 46 seconds. And with Prove Thyself, it'll go back down to 40 seconds because the penalty is being removed. So that has changed. How do I feel about this change? I'm not against it. I can understand how low mobility killers feel like gens go too fast, or when multiple people are working on gens, you feel like you don't have enough time to protect the gens, and obviously a killer can only be in one place at once, so they can't protect all the gens. At the same time, there are perks like Discordance and Surveillance, which do counter multiple people working on gens, so that's a thing you think is happening in multiple of your matches. You can run Discordance. Should you have to? I mean, once again, that's up to you. You choose the perks that you think help you based on the way you feel like your matches are working, whether it's to compensate for deficiencies of the killer you're playing, or to simply help you out throughout your matches. Choose the perks that work best for you and that apply to the killer you're playing and your type of play style. So in the end, Is this a big deal? No, I think this is a fair change. I'm not against it. I think that I like the way how they did update Prove Thyself to compensate for the change itself. Was this necessary? I don't think it was, but I'm also not against it. So not a huge deal. But the next change, I think, is pretty big. All right. So they have changed the bonuses for skill checks. If you guys did not know, when you would hit a great skill check, it would give you an additional 2% progression bonus, which is about 1.6 seconds of gen repair time taken off of, the total gen repair time. Now, they have cut this in half. They have nerfed this by 50%. Now hitting a great skill check will only give you a 1% bonus progression, and I'm very against this change. I know this may be polarizing for some, and some people may disagree with me, and that's perfectly fine. We're all entitled to our opinions. But in my opinion, hitting great skill checks, is a high-skilled ability, but it is also a high-risk ability, because going for great skill checks, you can also blow up your gen and give the killer a notification that you're working on that gen, which potentially could cost you getting that gen, especially if the killer is running pop or something along that line. So, it is a high risk ability going for great skill checks, and I think the 2% progression bonus was very minimal. It's not that big of a deal. It's not like you can gen rush by hitting great skill checks. And if you do, it's a high skill ability. When I say high skill, some people are going to be like, oh, how is it high skill to hit a great skill check? Red ranks do it all the time. I'm a rank 1 survivor myself. I hit great skill checks all the time myself. But once again, it is a skilled ability. There's a lot of people that are not red ranks, that are not high ranks. And I'm a very firm believer that you don't balance the game for just the top tier of players, for just the people that are the best at everything. Because what does that do to the rest of the player base? Do you know what I mean? Like, what does that do for the people that don't make it into high ranks or can't make it to red ranks or struggle with skill checks in general? Sometimes I play with people and I'm on a gen with somebody and they pop my gen and I'm just like, like they're missing skill checks, regular ass skill checks left and right. And I'm looking at them like, how do you miss skill checks at rank 1? But there are people that struggle with skill checks, and that's their deficiency. And I'm not saying, let's punish them for it. But I also don't think you punish the players that are able to consistently hit the great skill checks by nerfing them. I think it's a high risk, but also high skill ability in regards to skill checks. There's people that miss their DS. There's people that miss overcharges. A great skill check is a very small part of your skill check. And going for it, if you blow up your gen or miss it, there's a pretty steep penalty for that, especially if the killer's running something like overcharge, pop goes the weasel, etc. And it may cost you getting that gen done. So I don't think it's warranted for them to nerf this because they feel like high ranked survivors hit them on a consistent basis. I don't think you should punish people for the high skilled abilities in this game. This isn't a super high skill, focus intensive game in that regard. So the little things that do require skill, I don't think you should punish people for getting good at those things. The 2% bonus progression was not a major thing, but to nerf it by 50%, I kind of feel like, why are you punishing people for getting good at hitting great skill checks? I don't agree with that change. I think that's a really bad change, and I don't think that's a good direction to go in, where you start punishing, people for getting good at things that are very high risk in general. So that's how I feel about that. Now, perk changes, once again, I did mention that Prove Thyself was updated to reflect, giving you back that penalty when you're on a gen. In addition to that, Stakeout has also been updated. So with Stakeout, it now increases the great skill check success bonus from 1% to 2%. And if you guys are trying to read along in the chat, I am right here, right on top of my head. So Stakeout, I don't think is a good perk. I'm not a fan of survivors that run that perk. All they do is follow the killer around and don't take aggro's and don't help out their teammates, and they waste a lot of time just trying to get a few free great skill checks. I don't think it's worth it at all. So to me, that's minimal. But Stakeout, they did buff so that you get the old bonus progression for hitting great skill checks. I don't think that would make Stakeout any better or any more viable, kind of like what they did with what was it, Ace in the Hole, where you get to keep your add-ons now. And we can have another discussion on that, but I definitely don't think that survivors should lose their add-ons when they escape matches. It is very different for a survivor to escape a match versus a killer and their add-ons. Killer add-ons change the entire landscape of the match. It changes the entire way that the killer's power works. It literally controls so much on that match. There are so many add-ons that killers have that completely change the dynamic of a match. There are no survivor add-ons that do that. There's no survivor add-ons that do that take over the entire match like that and have such a high impact on the duration of the match. Most add-ons will have a one-time effect for maybe a few seconds. You know what I mean? So I don't think they should lose their add-ons, especially if they don't use them. I don't think that's a really fair change that they made, but that's the old update. Let's focus on this update. Next, map changes. There's a lot of map changes. A lot of survivors that abuse the infinites are not going to be too happy with this. But so there's a few things that they're changing with the maps. First things first, the size and the layout. They're making maps smaller. Very simply, they're making maps smaller. And in addition to that, they are going to change the maze tiles and space them out further. So more advanced survivors would know how to analyze the tiles, especially tiles that are near each other, and find a way to route those loops to basically turn regular ass tiles into their own custom infinite. And if the survivor was good, especially if he was able to mind game in that process, he can literally waste so much of the killer's time by abusing those loops and abusing those tiles that were in such close proximity to each other. They're changing that. They're spacing those out, and they're going to be making the map smaller, so it's going to have even less of an effect on top of that. So those are a couple of changes that are coming. In addition to that, they are nerfing all of the god windows for the most part. So there was a lot of maps that would have a really strong window, where if a survivor was to loop that window, the killer would have no choice but to go through the window himself, which has him lose time in the chase, and he would basically have to wait until the survivor vaulted that window 3 times for the entity to block it and his bloodlust to kick into that level to basically resume the chase outside of that god loop. Now, I'm not against this change. I'm not against this nerf with the god windows. I definitely understand how that can be frustrating for a lot of killers. There are some killers that is irrelevant for. Trapper mostly traps those windows. Nurse goes right through the wall. Spirit and Billy can catch up in their sprint. Ghostface can hide his terror radius. Wraith, same deal. He moves faster when he's cloaked. There's so many killers that can literally that this doesn't have that kind of dramatic effect on. But at the same time, there are a lot of killers that have low mobility that are basically forced to chase and wait for the entity to block the window and for them to get their bloodlust. Bloodlust. So here's the thing though, and this is a point a lot of survivor mains, if you want to call them that, are bringing up. And I'm not saying I agree with it, but they introduced bloodlust to counter god windows and survivors abusing windows. They introduced bloodlust to counter that. Killer gets faster the longer the chase goes, to the point where they can basically mitigate any window vault with their speed. So do you nerf bloodlust? Do you take it away to compensate for the fact that these god windows will no longer exist in the future? That would seem like the fair thing to do. Do I think they need to? Not necessarily, but I do know there's a lot of killers that just abuse bloodlust, right? Don't break pallets on purpose and just bloodlust the shit out of you. I don't necessarily think they need to nerf bloodlust, but that is a very good point that's being brought up by a lot of survivors is, a lot of these changes are very one-sided towards killers. And I'm not against most of these changes. I just feel like, I think they should do a better job of balancing those things out. I think if you're going to put out updates like this, give the killers some, give the survivors some, make their feel like there's balance. That's kind of why the community gets in these huge uproars and this killer versus survivor battle is constantly going on. It's just it's just never ending because devs put out the last update, which was a heavy nerf to survivors, right? And they made toolboxes basically irrelevant without a brand new part. And then they issue another update back to back with, once again, heavy survivor nerfs and all killer buffs. 2 updates in a row of full killer buffs and basically nothing for survivors in return. And you can understand why the survivor community gets upset about that, because it does make, them feel like they're making one-sided changes. So I definitely think, I think they should play good cop, bad cop with these changes more frequently, because it will at least have a more welcoming effect on the community. Now, how do I feel about the window changes? Once again, I don't think that, I think that I'm for the window changes. However, what I would have done instead of putting the open doorways there, I would have made those breakable walls. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't give the killer the ability to just walk around these windows for free. Only for the fact that it's way more of a drastic change. And a lot of these windows have been made irrelevant because the way these windows are positioned, and the devs do these things on purpose. A lot of people don't pay attention to it, but the way most of these windows are positioned, you can't even get fast vaults through them. So you're going to get a medium vault through it. So you put a doorway right next to these god windows, and the survivors stuck with a medium vault, right? Because of that huge change to fast vaults. They're stuck with a medium vault at best, while the killer's walking around, and depending on if he already has bloodlust, you're going to basically take that hit. They've almost turned god windows into 50-50s. That may sound drastic, because most likely they won't be 50-50s, but in theory, most of these god windows will almost become 50-50s depending on the killer's speed and how close you are in the chase. And I think what they should have done at first is added those doorways as breakable walls, so that if a survivor was to use that loop once, the killer has the choice right there on the spot. You know what? This is going to be annoying later on. Let me break this wall. And now he broke the wall, and now he has a quicker way through should the survivor or any other survivors try to abuse that for the rest of the match. I think that would have been a more warm change to something like this. But once again, I do think that they did need to nerf god windows, because I do know some survivors that just abuse that over and over and over again. And they will vault that damn window as many stinking times as they can. And I know it's frustrating for killers. So I definitely think I'm welcome to this change. I just would have used a breakable wall instead. So at least the killer loses a little bit of time setting it up for later on throughout the match, so it cannot be abused, for the remainder of the match. I think that would have made a little bit more sense, but not my choice. The devs made their decision, and, that is what it is. I once again do think that with them taking away strong loops on these maps, it would be cool if they were to introduce, a different type of loop that is more viable, or at least increase the safety in the remaining loops of the maps. These aren't necessarily things that are really discussed heavily. I'll read exactly what they say. They say certain windows on some maps were too safe, leaving no room for mind games and forcing the killer to chase the survivor through the window 3 times in order to block it. We have done a pass on most of these windows and altered the loop or replaced them. So they also said that some tiles have been changed for a variety of reasons, such as adjusting loop lengths or fixing abusable spots. The devs made a pretty big change when they introduced Hawkins and reworked Batum Preschool, where they made some ridiculously unsafe pallets and basically introduced like what they would call a 50-50 is you take the hit every single time. A lot of the pallets are useless on the newer maps, the newer versions of maps. A lot of those pallets are useless. You're basically a good killer, you're going to take that hit every single time. So my big thing about that is, okay, if you're going to take away the god loops or the god windows in these maps, which I'm all for, it would be cool if you guys, introduce a couple more obstacles to make those pallets more usable. Those, baby loops, if you want to call them that, more usable. Some of those are absolutely useless, and there's literally no reason to even use it, because the killer can literally walk around in half of a second and hit you the second you try to drop it on the other side. So it's very interesting how they how they, once again, make a really strong nerf to maps and survivors without, showing the good cop, the whole good cop side of it. Like, well, we've also increased the safety of multiple pallets to compensate for this, so that survivors are forced to utilize the infrastructure around the map better than focusing on running to this one loop that is ultra safe. You know what I mean? Like, I think they kind of should have put way more details into that. But that's my thoughts on it. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Now, in regards to the window spawning logic, they basically said that some buildings feature window variations where a different set of windows could be available from one match to the next. Depending on which windows were open, a building could either be incredibly safe or unsafe. I liked this, but I'm going to get into more why a little bit later. Now, the random element to these windows is being disabled on some maps to control the loop safety and give the buildings a consistent safety rating. I really like the procedural generation of windows and the maps of this game in general. It keeps things fresh, it keeps things exciting, and it adds a sense of variety to this playing the same maps over and over again. What they're doing is removing the random element to a lot of these windows on some maps to control the loop safety. While I like that idea in general, I also feel like it also hurts it also makes the matches less unpredictable. Do you know what I mean? Like, that unpredictable element of matches is kind of part of the fun. Like, where's the window as I'm running, this building? Or, the killer found me working on a gen in this building. Where's my window? Where's my pallets, etc. The unpredictability of that and not knowing where they are and finding them within a chase or trying to locate them and make use of them is kind of what adds, skill to both sides. If the window's always in the same place, then, the killers are going to know exactly where to go and what the survivors have to run to. So it takes away that unpredictability. It makes things more static. Trapper's going to always trap that window. He knows exactly where it is. It's going to become another Killer Shack window. Do you know what I mean? Nurse is going to know exactly where to blink to. Spirit's going to know exactly where to phase to. Whereas before, they would have to look and, try to find which window was open, which window was closed, etc. Now they know which one it's going to be every single time. So I just kind of think that these changes, although they're meant to help the weaker killers, big problem with this game is power creep and newer killers getting introduced that are, have more speed, have more mobility, have more abilities, have more power, and it really makes a big difference because when they make changes like this, it's a huge buff to the meta killers in the game. It's a huge buff to the really strong killers that weren't as affected by these things. I'm not a big fan of them making these areas more static and more fixated. I liked the unpredictability of it because I think it made more sense. But I understand exactly why they're doing it, and it can be a positive. It can be a positive. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how it plays out. But I definitely, I don't really think, I'm not sure how that's going to work out. We'll see how it plays out. And now, in regards to map changes, I'll go ahead and just touch on some of these level design changes for the maps. I'll scroll up a little bit so you guys can see them. I'm not going to go through all of these because they're just way too much, but the maps that are becoming smaller are Rotten Fields, Fractured Cowshed, Thompson House, Wrecker's Yard, and Temple of Purgation. All those maps are being reduced in size. How small, I don't know. Once again, there's just way too many changes to the maps to go over. You guys can screenshot this or copy this chart or save it and go over them yourself. But here are some screenshots of these changes. So, we have the infamous Ironworks building here. You guys can see that they put a doorway right here and move the window over there so you can vault that window, but the killer can easily walk around that and hopefully land a hit. In addition to that, they've done the same thing for this map. Put a doorway right over there where the window's over here. And lastly, they have changed it for the Rancid Awatar map. I don't know how to say that word. You probably don't either. Don't try to play me. They changed it as well where they once again put a window a doorway over there with the window over there. This one's fine. I definitely think this one's fine. Once again, I don't think these changes are bad. I'm all for them adding balance to the game. I just kind of feel like, once again, these obviously all help killer. They could have given the survivors a little something to soften the blow a little bit. But that's just my opinion. Not a big deal. Controller sensitivity improvements. For those of us that play with controllers, I play both on PC with controller and on PS4 with controller. So for those of us that play on controller, they are increasing the sensitivity. They are doubling, actually, the sensitivity. So if you felt like the sensitivity wasn't high enough, which I've stated on multiple occasions, you will now have the chance of dialing it up significantly to help you out. And whether that's 316 or countering 316, it will definitely be helpful if you're playing this game on controller going forward. So that's something I definitely look forward to. Let's see how it actually works, when it actually launches, though. I don't want to be too optimistic and then get disappointed because, that tends to happen sometimes. So there's a lot of other various quality of life improvements that they're doing. Legion's getting a small buff. So basically, before, when Legion was in frenzy, he wouldn't see blood pools or scratch marks until the survivor's fatigue ended. However, now, once Legion ends his frenzy, he will immediately be able to start seeing the blood pools and survivor scratch marks that they are leaving behind. So that way they will have a much easier time not losing the survivors when they are trying to get out of frenzy. In addition to that, attempting hook escapes. I always try to tell newer players when they come to my channel and stuff, guys, do not attempt escape on hook. Only use it as a very last resort, or if there's only one survivor left and they are not going to come for you. They are showing no signs of making the effort for coming to you. Now they have improved animations and such and visual effects to basically make it very clear to the newer survivors that you're killing yourself and you're making it, you're speeding up your sacrifice. So very welcome. In addition to that, Head On is now getting a visual clock dial on the perk emblem in the bottom right corner to let you know the charge of Head On becoming active. So this will be a lot more useful than it just being off and then magically turning on. You're just waiting for it to turn on. You don't know how much time you have, if you're going to be able to land the Head On the killer, or if the killer will beat you to it and can pull you out of the locker. Now you'll have a visual indicator of how much time it's going to take for the Head On to be available to you to use on the killer. Very, very welcome change. I still don't think Head On's that great of a perk, but it is very fun to use, and sometimes you just got to have those perks you can have fun with. You know what I'm saying? In addition to that, they are also canceling more recancels. I guess that's the best way to say it. Sounds weird, but yeah. No more Mori cancels. So for all you clown mains out there, the few of you that exist, there will be no more stomping someone's head into the ground until the timers run out or until they bleed out. Go find something else to troll with, or just don't troll at all and just play the game to have fun. Why don't you try that? All right, so that's a very, very, very welcome change. I know that is something that is very frustrating to deal with, especially when you are the recipient of it. They've also improved protection hits. It doesn't matter. Medal of Man is still trash. So that is going to bring all of the changes coming to the PTB tomorrow. To close, yes, Medal of Man is still F tier. It is still garbage. They have completely destroyed that perk. If they wanted to be half useful, they would reduce it from 3 protection hits to 2 protection hits. That would make it more usable in a match. Or if they want to leave it at 3 protection hits, what they should do is remove the passive of if you are able to activate your Medal of Man and heal fully, the killer can see your aura if you're outside of whatever range. Take that away completely. Medal of Man is garbage, it's trash, it's unusable. The things you have to do trying to get it to work for you is just not worth the effort. You have to work overtime and even bring in styptics and things of that matter just to get the perk to work. It is garbage. If they want Medal of Man to be viable, there's 2 options. reduce the protection hits from 3 to 2. Now it's usable. And get rid of the passive. The passive of, oh, if you use your Medal of Man, the next time you heal fully, the killer can see your aura if you're outside of X range. Delete that altogether. It is a very hard perk to make use of. You definitely don't want it to be overpowered and broken, but most survivors will not get 3 protection hits in a match. And if you get 3 protection hits in a match, kudos to you, because people are wasting styptics just to be able to do that. And now you basically are debuffed the second you heal
MaineMania.
up.
Listen to this, man.
The trade-off is just not worth it. If you want Medal of Man to be viable, devs, please listen to me. Please make those changes, and hopefully the perk will become at least somewhat usable. It is garbage tier. It is not worth running, and it is absolutely trash in its current iteration. So this protection hit update, useless. It doesn't help, and it's not going to help. Nobody cares. Protection hits are too inconsistent, too unreliable, and they're also very difficult to get. And someone's going to say, oh, just wait for the killer to carry you on your shoulder and give a free hit. You shouldn't be playing this game to farm protection hits trying to get your perk to work. You shouldn't be giving the killer free hits trying to get this perk to work. Like, protection hits are very rare. It's a very rare thing in this game. Asking for 3, in my opinion, is just asking for too much. And once again, if you look at the usage rate of the perk, and you look at the fact that nobody uses it, and the people that try to use it still can't even get it to work, it shows that it's just not well designed in its current iteration. So the perk needs to be reworked, it needs to be fixed, it needs to be updated in order for it to even become D tier. For now, Medal of Man will remain in F tier. Don't use it unless you're trolling and you want to die. So once again, that will bring our updates to a close. I hope you guys enjoyed me going over these changes with you guys. I'll try to do this more often. If you guys did not know, I also upload Dead by Daylight videos on my YouTube channel every single day. So make sure to drop a sub if you're new. And if you did like the information in this video, please give this video a like and share it with your friends. Also, let me know how you guys felt about a lot of these changes in the comment section below. We're all entitled to our opinions and to feel differently about the changes, but just try to keep things civil and just try to look at things from both sides. I know a lot of people are very heavy on killer, heavy on survivor, but at the same time, when you look at these changes, you have to be objective to, is this fair to the other side? Is this fun for the other side? And I think that is the best way to look at this. And don't just look at it from, oh, I'm red rank, both sides, perspective. So the hell am I. So is a lot of people in the community. That doesn't matter either. You know what I mean? Try to look at it from, will the average player of this game on either side be able to enjoy or appreciate this change and what it does for the pace of the match and for the overall fun of the game? It's just the best way to look at things. So try not to be too one-sided, guys. Try to be more open-minded to both sides and how these things affect both sides. And once again, if you are new, hit that subscribe button. In addition to that, make sure to follow me on Twitch, where I live stream Dead by Daylight almost every single day. So thank you guys for watching. It's your boy MaineMania, and I'm out. Peace.